Something unexpected just happened inside the Cleveland Browns locker room. Something so bold, so out of character for a team that's been drowning in tension all season, that the entire moment went viral before anyone could even process what it meant. A group of players stepped forward and handed Shedeur Sanders a gift, but not just any gift. It was a custom-made award, an award they created themselves, honoring a rookie quarterback who wasn't even supposed to have the locker room behind him in the first place. Think about that for a second. This is the same team that spent months surrounded by rumors, leaks, quiet frustration, and whispers of players ready to walk away. The same environment where some insiders claimed the locker room didn't want Shedeur, didn't trust the coaching decisions around him, and didn't believe he was being treated fairly. And now, the same players who once stayed silent have stepped forward in the loudest way possible, publicly crowning their quarterback with a gesture that says far more than any press conference ever could. Why now? What changed? And why does it feel like this award wasn't just a joke or a moment of fun, but a message? Because when a locker room creates something like this, it's never random. It's never accidental. It's a signal, one the entire football world has suddenly started paying attention to. And the deeper you look into this moment, the clearer it becomes. This wasn't just a gift. This was a shift. The moment the video hit social media, everyone stopped scrolling. It wasn't a highlight. It wasn't a press conference. And it definitely wasn't something the Browns media team planned. It was raw, unfiltered locker room energy. Players crowding around Shedeur Sanders, laughing, cheering, and handing him a bright, custom-made Hemi Award like he had just been crowned the king of the building. And the crazy part? They weren't faking it. You could see it on their faces. These were grown men genuinely excited to celebrate their quarterback. This wasn't a small gesture either. Players don't create awards unless something inside the locker room has shifted. For weeks, outsiders heard about tension, frustration, and uncertainty surrounding Shedeur's role. But inside that room, something entirely different was taking shape. A level of respect that nobody on the outside was prepared for. When Shedeur held up the shirt and the award, the reaction from his teammates said it all. They weren't just giving him a nickname or a joke trophy. They were acknowledging what they'd been seeing every week: the calm, the work ethic, the leadership. And the way he carried himself like someone meant to be there. And the moment the clip went viral, fans realized this wasn't just a fun locker room celebration. It was the first public sign that the Browns players had chosen their quarterback. But this sudden wave of support didn't appear out of nowhere. And what led up to it tells an even deeper story. Before the Hemi Award ever hit social media, there were already signs that something inside the Browns locker room was shifting around Shedeur Sanders. The public only saw glimpses, but the players saw everything: how he practiced, how he prepared, how he carried himself when nobody was watching. And slowly, that quiet respect started breaking through the cracks. You could see it the first time Myles Garrett reacted to one of Shedeur's deep balls. He didn't try to hide it. He sat on the sideline, stared downfield, and let out a stunned "wow," like he just watched something he wasn't expecting from a rookie. Other players did the same, leaning in, nodding, hyping him up after throws that didn't make the highlight reels, but made an impression in the building. And that's what people outside the team didn't understand. While reporters pushed rumors of tension and skepticism, the players were slowly building trust in the guy who stepped in and refused to fold under pressure. They weren't seeing a rookie struggling to keep up. They were seeing a quarterback who acted like he'd been here before. By the time the Hemi Award appeared, the truth was obvious. The locker room had already bought in. But if the players were supporting him for weeks, then where did the negativity earlier in the season come from? And why were so many reporters pushing a different story? The answer leads back to the earliest drama inside Cleveland, and the leaks nobody wanted to address. Long before anyone saw Shedeur smiling with a Hemi Award in his hands, the energy inside the Browns' locker room was very different. Reports quietly circulated, never loud enough to hit mainstream coverage, but strong enough to reach insiders, that players were frustrated with how the organization handled Shedeur from the start. It wasn't just confusion. It wasn't just disagreement. Rumors suggest it reached a point where a few major names were considering finding ways to get out of Cleveland entirely. But somehow, none of this made it to the national media. None of it showed up in headlines. And that raised even more questions. Why were reporters avoiding the story? Why were the leaks being brushed aside? Some fans believe the local media didn't want to expose the situation because it would make leadership look unstable at a time when the team desperately needed calm. The tension became obvious when certain linemen dropped subtle digs online. Nothing dramatic, but enough to make people wonder how divided the room really was. Meanwhile, anonymous leaks described frustration with management decisions around the quarterback spot and confusion about why Shedeur wasn't being given a fair shot early. And then, almost as fast as the negativity appeared, it vanished. No explanation, no correction, just silence. That's what made the Hemi Award moment so shocking. How did a locker room that once felt divided suddenly unite behind the same quarterback? It doesn't make sense until you understand who was working with Shedeur behind the scenes and why that changed everything. As the season unfolded, something strange began happening around the Cleveland Browns, something that didn't feel like coincidence. While players inside the locker room were forming their own opinions of Shedeur Sanders, a completely different narrative was being shaped on the outside, and almost all of it was coming from the same place, the Cleveland media pipeline. At first, it looked like typical NFL coverage. Updates on practices, rumors about depth charts, whispers about who was getting reps. But then the tone shifted. A handful of credentialed reporters began repeatedly pushing the idea that Kevin Stefanski and his staff were the masterminds behind Shedeur's development. Articles popped up describing long hours in the film room, protection adjustments, and rapid improvement under coaching guidance. Each story sounded polished, official, almost rehearsed. But something was off. For one, Stefanski's history with quarterbacks isn't exactly spotless. Fans know this, analysts know this, even former players know this. So when reporters began painting him as the architect behind a rookie who already arrived in the NFL polished, people started raising eyebrows. It didn't match what they'd seen from the Browns in past seasons, and it didn't match what they were seeing from Shedeur on the field, a quarterback displaying habits and mechanics he clearly learned long before Cleveland ever came calling. That's when fans started piecing things together. Some began questioning whether these stories were genuinely coming from reporters, or if they were being fed to them. Rumors circulated online that the coaching staff may have wanted to reshape the narrative during a rocky stretch of the season. Others believed certain reporters were protecting the relationships inside the building. None of this could be proven, but the pattern was impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, the media seemed uninterested in covering the negative leaks from earlier in the year. Reports of locker room tension, frustration with management, and big-name players considering their futures. Instead, the focus remained on polishing the image of the coaching staff, positioning them as crucial to Shedeur's rise. But the truth eventually started slipping out anyway, not from reporters, not from the front office, but from someone who had been quietly working with Shedeur long before Cleveland's narrative machine started spinning. Because once people heard from the man who trained Shedeur every week without fanfare, the entire storyline the media was pushing began to unravel fast. While Cleveland's media machine continued pushing the idea that Shedeur Sanders' development was happening inside the Browns building, the truth was taking shape somewhere entirely different, far away from the cameras, the reporters, and the carefully crafted narratives. And that truth came straight from someone who wasn't interested in spotlight or credit. Darryl Colbert, the man who had been training Shedeur long before he ever became a trending topic in the NFL. The moment Darryl spoke publicly, everything Cleveland reporters had been claiming started to crumble. Because unlike the stories about film room sessions with Stefanski and dramatic growth arcs inside the facility, Darryl broke it down simply, clearly, and without exaggeration. He had been working with Shedeur every single week, every Monday and every Tuesday, back when the rookie wasn't even getting real reps in practice. While the starter took the bulk of the workload, Shedeur stayed sharp by putting in the extra hours that nobody outside his inner circle even knew existed. And these weren't light workouts. Darryl explained how they focused on arm conditioning, timing, footwork, mechanics, and cleaning up anything that felt off from the previous week. They studied film together. They corrected tiny details that could change the outcome of a single throw. They kept him ready for an opportunity that hadn't even arrived yet. All while the public believed Shedeur was simply a backup waiting his turn in silence. Suddenly, fans understood why Shedeur looked so prepared the moment he stepped on the field. Why he never played like a rookie drowning in a new system. Why his composure didn't match the typical first-year quarterback panic. Because the work wasn't happening in secret rooms at the facility, it was happening through a relentless routine that had been in motion since high school, guided by people who genuinely cared about Shedeur's growth, not their own credit. This revelation made the earlier media narrative look even stranger. Reports claiming Stefanski developed Shedeur no longer made sense. The timeline didn't match, the details didn't match, and the results on the field definitely didn't match. Instead, it became clear that while Cleveland's staff may have supported him, the foundation was built long before they ever became part of his story. And once this truth became public, the locker room's sudden loyalty toward Shedeur made far more sense. They weren't just supporting a quarterback. They were supporting someone who had earned every inch of his success. But the strongest sign of their belief wasn't in words. It was in the award they created for him, and what it truly symbolized. Once the truth about Shedeur's behind-the-scenes preparation became clear, the sudden unity inside the Cleveland Browns locker room didn't feel random anymore. It wasn't a miracle transformation. It wasn't a scripted media moment. It was the result of players witnessing something fans never get to see. A rookie who worked like a veteran before he was ever given veteran responsibilities. NFL players pay attention to effort. They know who cuts corners. They know who's pretending. And they definitely know who's putting in real work when the cameras aren't watching. So while outsiders debated narratives and reporters painted whatever picture fit the headline of the day, the people inside the building saw Shedeur show up on days he didn't have to, study film nobody assigned to him, and attack technical details most rookies ignore until it becomes a problem. That matters in a locker room. In fact, it changes everything. Veterans began noticing he didn't lean on excuses when he wasn't getting reps. He didn't sulk, he didn't complain, and he didn't act entitled. Instead, he prepared like someone who expected to play, long before the opportunity arrived. And when his moment finally came, he stepped in with the calm confidence of a quarterback who had been planning for this exact scenario for years. That kind of mindset earns respect quickly. And once players saw the results, 300-plus-yard games, precision throws, near-flawless decision-making, the momentum behind him became undeniable. So by the time the locker room gathered around to present the Himmy Award, that moment wasn't spontaneous hype. It was a declaration. A statement from the people who matter most, his teammates, that they trust him, they believe in him, and they see him as more than just the next guy up. Players don't give out awards lightly, especially not to rookies. It takes consistency, leadership, work ethic, and showing day after day that you belong. Shedeur had checked every box. And while that award looked like a funny, lighthearted gift on the surface, it meant far more than fans realized. Because in the NFL, when a locker room unites behind you, that's the first sign that a franchise is shifting. But what that award symbolized goes even deeper, and it has major implications for Cleveland's future. At first glance, the Hemi Award looked like a simple joke. Players messing around, hyping up their rookie quarterback. But anyone who truly understands NFL locker rooms knows moments like this don't happen without purpose. These gifts aren't random, they aren't casual, and they definitely aren't given to players who haven't earned the room's respect. This wasn't about a t-shirt or a funny trophy. It was about a message the players wanted the world to hear. Because while reporters spent months pushing conflicting narratives, the players were watching their reality unfold firsthand. They saw the preparation, they saw the leadership, and they saw a young quarterback who didn't flinch under pressure. So when the Hemi Award ceremony happened, it wasn't just a celebration. It was the locker room choosing their leader. And that's where the symbolism matters. NFL teams rarely unite behind a rookie this quickly. Most first-year quarterbacks earn respect gradually, one game at a time. But Shedeur didn't follow that timeline. He accelerated it. He arrived with a professional mindset, delivered veteran-level performances, and handled chaos with a calmness that doesn't come from coaching. It comes from preparation. The award was the players' way of acknowledging that. But there's another layer to this, a layer tied to the internal tension earlier in the season. Some players reportedly felt Shedeur wasn't being given a fair chance early on. Rumors suggest there was frustration with how management handled his development. And certain players were even considering their futures if things didn't change. Now, fast forward, and the same players are publicly honoring him. That shift sends a strong message to everyone outside the building, especially the coaching staff and the media. It's the players saying, "We see who he really is, we know what he brings, and we're rolling with him." That level of endorsement doesn't just boost morale, it changes the hierarchy inside the team. When a locker room rallies behind a quarterback, it influences decisions far beyond the field. It shifts trust, it shifts power, and it forces the organization to reconsider how it views its future. This viral award wasn't just a moment of fun, it was a turning point. Because now the Browns aren't just supporting Shedeur, they're forming an identity around him. And the real question is what that means for the franchise moving forward. The Hemi Award didn't just reveal how the locker room feels. It raised a much bigger question about what comes next for the Cleveland Browns. And the quarterback, suddenly at the center of their identity. Because once a team publicly rallies behind a rookie, everything around the organization begins to shift. Expectations shift, leadership dynamics shift, and the pressure on management increases in ways that can't be ignored. For months, the storyline coming out of Cleveland felt unstable. Conflicting reports, locker room tension, frustrations with decision-making, and rumors of players questioning the direction of the franchise. But now, with one viral moment, the energy has transformed. The players have shown where their loyalty lies, and that alone forces the Browns to rethink their approach. If the locker room believed Shedeur is the guy, then the franchise has no choice but to consider what that means long-term. And make no mistake, players do not get behind someone this quickly unless they feel something real. They've seen rookies come and go. They've worked with quarterbacks who talked a big game but never backed it up. Yet here they are, united behind someone who just stepped into the league. That tells you everything you need to know about how they view his potential. Still, this unity puts the organization in a challenging position. If the coaches and front office continue pushing narratives that don't match reality, the players will feel it. If they fail to support Shedeur the way he supports the team, they'll feel that too. And with rumors already suggesting that certain players were prepared to leave earlier in the season, Cleveland cannot afford another internal split. What happens now could shape the franchise for the next decade. Do they build around the quarterback their players trust? Do they adjust their system to match his strengths? Do they allow the natural leadership forming inside the locker room to guide the direction of the team? Or do they repeat history, allowing internal politics, media narratives, and mismanagement to get in the way of a player who could change everything? Because while it's clear that Shedeur Sanders doesn't need Cleveland to validate him, Cleveland might need Shedeur more than they've ever needed a quarterback before. And the Hemi Award was the player's way of saying it out loud before anyone else in the building dared to. When you step back and look at everything that's unfolded in Cleveland, from the early season tension to the conflicting media reports to the viral Hemi Award, one thing becomes crystal clear. This isn't just about a rookie quarterback stepping into the spotlight. It's about a franchise being forced to confront its own identity, whether it's ready to or not. Shedeur Sanders didn't walk into an easy situation. He entered a building full of noise, uncertainty, and whispers of players questioning the direction of the team. Yet somehow, in the middle of all that chaos, he became the one thing everyone could unite around. That alone says everything about who he is. Because quarterbacks don't earn locker rooms, they earn trust. They earn respect. They earn belief. And Shedeur did it not by demanding attention, but by preparing when nobody was watching, by working when others were resting, and by stepping into his opportunity with the poise of someone who had been waiting his entire life for that moment. The Hemi Award didn't create that respect, it revealed it. Now the spotlight isn't on the media. It isn't on the coaching staff. It isn't on the early season drama. It's on the franchise itself. Cleveland must decide whether it will step into this new era with clarity or continue clinging to old patterns that have held the team back for years. Because the players have already cast their vote. They chose their quarterback. They chose their leader. And they chose the direction they want this team to go. The real question is whether Cleveland's decision-makers will listen. What makes this moment powerful isn't the award, the video, or the celebration. It's what it represents. It's the first time the team has shown, publicly and unapologetically, that Shedeur Sanders is not just filling a role, he's defining one. And with every snap, every throw, and every display of composure, he's pushing the franchise to rise to his standard rather than asking permission to fit into theirs. Shedeur's story in Cleveland is just beginning, but the message around him is already loud. He didn't wait for the Browns to believe in him. He gave them a reason to. And now the fate of the franchise depends on whether they recognize the opportunity standing right in front of them before someone else does.